Welcome to the Parkdale Open Day 2021. We have a great lot of information for everyone here today. But firstly, I'd like to touch on the Wool Connect conference sponsored by Snyder's Wool Buyers and Processors, a great 3-day event with global industry participants. Some of the main issues covered were the strength of demand for non-mules wool. The world supply of 20 micron and over of non-mules wool is quite okay. The finer you come under 20 micron, the mules-free wool is in short supply. And the demand is certainly there for non-mules wool, going against the trends of other types. This has been evident with us here at Parkdale for the past 18 months. We sell wool about 3 times a year, sometimes more, and over the last 18 months we've seen a $1 per kilogram greasy or better price over the auction sale for similar types of mules wool. Also, when the market has a hiccup, the non-mules wool is not affected as much and holds its place. Traceability has become a big issue, and this was covered within the Wool Connect conference. Schemes such as RWS, Responsible Wool Standards, is coming to the fore, and I think it's a good opportunity for growers to tell the world what we're doing down on the farm and all the good things that and get that good messages out there. There's a lot of people that are not mulesing, and we need to, and they've got good animal ethical standards throughout their farm operation, and these need to be brought to the fore. Animal welfare was a huge topic. Each session had speakers talking on animal welfare throughout the conference. Other issues covered were traceability was a big one, and the need to trace the product right back from the garment back to the farm. This can only be done with assurance program schemes. Quarters, evolution block, shed design, presentation of sheep, etc. Our system in other industries. This allows contractors to assess the job prior to arrival. I thought that was a very interesting concept. In the lineup of speakers here today, we have the AWI Chairman, Mr. Jock, Laurie, to give an address on the AWI future direction and answer your questions. Dr. Peter Howe on animal health. Snyder Australia, Tim Marweedle, has kindly supplied a pre-recorded video to give a briefing on the wool market and trends. Unfortunately, Tim won't be available to answer questions. Robert Mudford will take us through the lineup of rams available at the annual Parkdale on-property ram sale, held on the 27th of September at 1 p.m, 9 or 10 a.m. inspection. Robert will also bring us up to date with the SRS company. There's been some amazing developments within the company, which was founded by the late Dr. Jim Watts, and the breeding method that we use within our flock. We can all become a member of the SRS company, all commercial growers, at your level, and there's great benefits to achieve along the way. We'll have a coffee break at some stage, so no need to rush the day. During the presentations, you can send in your questions at any time, and please indicate who you'd like to answer your question. and we'll have a panel session at some stage during the day. But firstly, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jock Laurie, Chairman of Australian Wool Innovation, and to give us his insights of where the industry is. Thanks, Jock.
Jock, if we could just start off by having a bit of a general chat about the industry. 2021 is interesting for wool on so many levels. There's wool poll underway, the challenges of the market with COVID. So let's start off by sort of asking how you see the Australian wool industry right at the moment.
Look, I think it's an interesting question. If you take into consideration what's happened with COVID in the last 18 months and what's happening in Australia right now with COVID, then the wool industry is probably reasonably strong. I think it's surprised a few people that it's got back to where it is after hitting about 859 or 858 spring last year. And so I think that, that really shows some positive stuff. I think it gives me a level of confidence that there's actually, some demand out there and possibly some building demand out there. And that, the fact that we're now starting to get a bit more wool into the market, the wool's better qualities because of the drought. I think all of that's going to be important going forward. So I think there's some very positive stuff out there. I don't think it's clear in our mind at the moment, what the world's going to look like after COVID. We don't know, for instance, whether it's going to be formal wear at offices 7 days, 5 days a week, or whether it's going to be 3 days a week in casual wear. We don't know whether social functions and things are going to get up and get going, so that we've, a lot of our product goes into suiting and formal wear and ladies' clothes and things. So it's not clear in our mind where we're going there. So we're watching all the markets at the moment and really trying to get an understanding about when we can go back in and invest our marketing money into those areas and really what we should be targeting. And we're also very conscious about the fact that we're going to have to do a lot more innovation when it comes to potentially new fabrics, new products, new uses of wool because of how things may change. And so that's a very big challenge for us. But the main thing that we've got to do is make sure that wool's at the forefront of everybody's mind when they actually start buying again. And so, the big thing is that we've got to be in the space to keep wool relevant in people's faces. We've got to make sure that we're clearly identifying the economies that there's going to be people who are actually buying. And we've got to be in a position to make sure that we've got the right products that they actually want to buy. So there's some big challenges there. And then at the same time, some of the labelling stuff that's happening potentially in the European Parliament at the moment in regard to environmental labelling of products, where the analysis they're doing on wool shows that it's more environmentally damaging than man-made fibres, which is absolutely staggering in the current environment and current debate we're having about, environmental issues around the world. So there's a huge amount of work going into sort of making sure that we're getting that process fair, and we don't believe it's fair to wool at the moment. So getting that process fair and being involved in the politics of that and trying to protect the name of the natural fibre wool, because that is critically important. And then making sure that we're sort of re-establishing, the environmental credentials around wool worldwide, and especially in the markets we're operating. So positive signs in the marketplace, in the greasy market, positive signs with production lifting and quality lifting. But we can see from the information we're getting back from overseas, there are some real challenges in the marketplace over there that we're starting to address, and we're going to have to really address as the economies open up.
So why do you believe that growers should have a 2% levy compared to what the levy rate is at the moment, which is 1.5%?
Well, this is the board sort of sat on 2% for the last couple of wool polls, and one of the reasons they've done that is that we believe it gives us the buffer. So the last time we were at 2%, the EMI was up towards the 20 lakes. We're 330 to 40 million kilos of wool, good income coming in, up to about nearly $70 million coming. And what we did was we set about 35 million of that aside. We protected the money to make sure that it wouldn't be wasted and wouldn't just be spent for the sake of being spent. We protected that money and set it over there. And like all farmers, a drought comes along, a rainy day comes along, and you need to get access to funds. And what we wanted to do was build a bank so that we had access to funds when we had the opportunity. And so then we had a reduced levy, which cut 25% of our income straight away. Then we had reduction drop from 330 down to about 275. Then we had the EMI drop down to 850 at the bottom off the top of it, which meant that we had a reduction of nearly 50% of the income of the company. So while we still have a good amount of money sitting in the bank, we have taken about 30 to 35% of our staffing capacity out, and we've taken about 50%, 45 to 50% of our income out of the business. And that has downsized our capacity to actually operate in that space. We've also got a make-up from COVID. We've actually got to go back and reinvest back in the markets, and we're probably going to have to overdo it in order to be able to make up for what we haven't done the last 12 to 18 months. And so the money that's sitting there at the moment will be drawn down substantially and fairly quickly just to be able to protect wool image, number one, and to be able to protect our market share in that space. So we believe that the 2% will actually allow us to ride out the highs and lows of the market. And the board will, as they've already done, they'll make sure that they actually are very conscious about growers' funds, and they'll sit growers' funds aside to make sure that they're prepared to look after them. The $35 million will definitely be a part of, maybe the defensive wool program. That money's been put aside for those sort of blue sky things that come out of the thing, and that'll be drawn down for projects that are really important to the industry that aren't necessarily potentially research projects. They're more about a defence mechanism we're putting in place to protect the image of wool and the brand of wool. So that's why we're going for 2%. It gives us the buffer to ride out the highs and the lows. And as all of us in farming know and wool growing know, we get those highs and lows. And managing AWI is no different to managing our own business. And we want to come out at the end of the drought and still have a bit of cash left when we're farmers. Well, we want to come out at the end of COVID and still have a bit of cash left so that we can turn around and kick back into gear very quickly and get the production, so to speak, back up. And that's about really getting out there and building demand for the product out and the things. So that's why it's important. That's why we're saying 2%. We know we're getting criticised because there's money in the bank. But you've got to realise that $50 million, around $50 million of that is untouchable. It's all required to wind up the company. And the rest of the money is there, some of it because of underspend and some of it there because of protecting the reserves that are already there that will be utilised going forward anyway. So that's why, in the end, it's up to growers. But, what do you want to invest in your industry? How much do you want to invest in your industry? How much do you try and want to defend your product and drive demand? And at the same time, it's basically up to you fellas to figure that out, have a think about that. And if you think that AWI can actually get out there and deliver on that, then that's good. One of the interesting things is when you look at the ROP that's just come out, the ROP was quite clear that our marketing and research projects, the money's actually been well spent, well targeted and well spent, and provided some very good results. So that gives us confidence that we're actually getting that component right. And what we need to do now is to ramp it up as economies open up around the world and take advantage of that. And in order to be able to do that and rebuild that staffing capacity back in the organisation, we're going to need to be properly funded, and we believe 2% rate is the level that we can do those things for you.
And things like the fly strike vaccine with the CSIRO and the University of Melbourne, better shearing, catch and drag type mechanism systems. There's a whole lot of work that can either be fast tracked or be commercialised a lot more easily if that extra levy is paid.
Look, there's a huge number of programs in the research component that we also cut funding out of, and dogs was one of them, for instance. More research into shearing technologies, another one that, while we're still doing a lot of expenditure in training, and we're doing more in these modules we're building and shed design and all that sort of stuff, we've got to keep getting out there and investing in these things, because it's one of the biggest issues that we have. Obviously, the fly issue, absolutely critical to continue to invest in that. That's going to be a very, very important component of what we do. So from a research point of view on farm, which is about 25% of our money spent sort of domestically on farm issues, then we've got to keep doing that. We've got to actually provide alternatives for graziers to go to take cost out, to make the workplace safer, to, in a time when you're getting chemical resistance across the board, we've got to find better ways to manage some of the problems that we have there. Now, it could be going down a breeding path, and that'll be individual decisions that people make, or it could be utilising a vaccine or utilising chemicals or utilising better technology and equipment in shearing sheds that allow crutching to be done in a far easier way. So that's where we get the full range of things, and then people can make up their own mind about where they want to go. Another area where we've had to reduce a lot of expenditure, of course, is around dogs, training of managing dogs. And that's been a really important thing, just talking up into Queensland where they've put up, enough capacity up there, probably around 8 million sheep up there inside the dog fences and getting rid of the dogs. So, there are only 2 at the moment. So there's areas that we can really continue to invest in to provide all of those options for growers.
And what's the future of wool queue?
Look, I think the development of wool queue has basically happened. It's been happening now for probably 12 months, and we've been running a few sales with it, trying it just to see whether it works or whether it doesn't work. I mean, obviously, for it to go out of that now into the commercial arena, it needs to happen. In the end, it's been an investment to provide alternate options for selling wool for growers. There've been a lot of meetings with growers who could see the positive elements of it. There was, there's been a lot of discussions through the process, but there's also a lot of angst there at the moment. We're well aware of that. And what we want to do is to take it out and put it into the public arena. I think if you go through all the other agricultural commodities, the vast majority of them all get sold in one way or another through an electronic format. And this is probably only mirroring what's happening in a lot of other industries in agriculture. So, the grains industry, or the Auctions Plus with cattle and sheep, the fish markets, if you go there and have a look at those, they're all sold through these systems. So I've got no doubt that it'll be utilised somewhere, sometime in the industry. Whether the industry at this stage is prepared to pick it up and run with it, it'll be interesting to see, but the development's been done so, and now it's a matter of finding a way to move that forward, put it into the commercial arena, and let it go from there. But there's been a bit of discussion around wool queue and the money that's been spent on wool queue, but over the last 7 years, if you have a look at the money that AWI has spent on sort of research and then take that back to what wool queues cost, it's a pretty insignificant figure when you have a look at the big budget of the budget that we have, the R&D budget we have. Wool queues are, not a huge amount of that. While the cost itself has been substantial, it's been over a long period of time, and it's just one element of what we've done in trying to develop systems better for people to be able to market wool.
Thanks for your time, Chairman. I've got the questions here. I'll start off with one from Don Mudford from Parkdale, of course. 85% of shearer injuries are from catching and dragging sheep from the pen to where sheep are shorn, as you know. He's been designing a no catch and drag with his shearing contractor who is shorn in other countries with no catch and drag systems. I understand AWI is currently designing something similar. Do you have any information of where that is up to? And I know for a fact it's in the latest edition of Beyond the Bar.
Yeah, for sure. There's been a huge amount of work going into this. Obviously, the whole shearers shortage stuff that's been exaggerated by COVID, and I think the drought and the reduction in wool, the reduction in number of sheep, and now all of a sudden we're really starting to feel the pinch, and have been now for about 12 months. AWI have been putting an enormous amount of training into the shearing component, but at the same time doing a lot of research into shed design and clearly understanding the impact of worker injury, work safety issues around the shearing shed. And there's no doubt that the catch and drag is the biggest risk area. The sheer body weight that you're dealing with in many cases, the drag and twisting to get them set up ready to go down the belly wall, I think is having a big impact. But not only that, with crutching also, there's a huge amount of dragging for a little bit of work. So the company has been and has got developed at the moment a sort of a modular setup, and which is basically trying to eliminate, if we can, eliminate the catch and drag component. It's done pneumatically, I think, and it's the sheep sort of run up a race and they run in, they get caught, come out onto the board, and then are tipped and presented to the shearer right in position. So all they have to do is just grab them, tip them on their backside, press a button, and they're released into the position ready for the belly wool, just a slight adjustment. So we're taking a lot of that out. That's been developed at the moment. There's some trial work going on, and I know some fellas have been doing some shearing in that in the last week. I'm hearing very positive stuff coming out of it. It's obviously a pretty major change to the way things are being done, but certainly talking to many shearers, which I do pretty regularly, there's no doubt that there's a real desire for them to find ways to eliminate that catch and drag. It is a big risk to them, but it's also, you know, especially crutching, is just a huge amount of work for coming out and doing bung crutches and things. So they're seriously looking at it. You know, we know that there's been a lot of use of crutching trailers and things lately, which is all about trying to eliminate this problem too. And you know, if we can get this operating in a modular form where you could build you know, 1 or 2 stand, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 stands, however many you wanted to. You could sit them into any machinery shed anywhere, probably without having to build a new shed, and you could have a module set up with 6 or 8 stands operating there if you wanted to, quite clearly, and that would all be done automatically. So I think that's a very big step forward, a very positive step forward, and obviously we'll continue to develop that. And you know, it'd be great to get some of those things out working fairly soon to really trial them in the real environment.
And as I mentioned, there's an article in the latest Beyond the Bale, and it's also on wool.com, a whole story on that, and how essentially AWI is working with, you know, shearers on the ground on this. This isn't, you know, work in a lab. This is, you know, work on farm. Another question.
Any of that work on that needs to be done with professional people. So the first thing you do is you get shearers there, you know, experienced shearers who really understand what the game is. You get them operating in the environment. And obviously what we need to do is try and get hold of some more video footage of it actually operating so people can actually see it operating. It's a bit better than a still photo to actually sit there and watch it operate. So we'll try and get some of that and actually get that back out through social media at some stage so everybody can have a good look at it.
Indeed. A question from Winya Polmarinos. Why don't we have a register for all new trainee shed staff with wool grower funds? A very simple initiative is the suggestion.
I think they've certainly got the details of all the people that they're training and all the shed staff and everything they're training. We obviously need to make sure that that's available to everybody, understanding the privacy issues with all of this stuff. There's always privacy issues somewhere. So no doubt we'll have a look at that, and you know, we'll make a commitment to actually follow that up and see whether we can get some sort of a public thing, or whether there's some way that we can get that information out. There's no point training people if we actually people don't know that they're available there and ready for work, and they've got a level of experience behind them and training behind them. So if we're doing the training, what we want to do is get them into the workforce, and obviously having their names on a register would be a very good, simple way to go about it.
Indeed. Another question from Don Mudford. In regards to mulesing information, it's hard to find through growers' mainstream agricultural media, he says. As a non-mules grower and shearing at 8-month intervals, we're constantly selling wool at various times of the year. Over the past 18 months, he says, we have received a premium of about $1 greasy or better for 16 to 20 micron wool. Information he's received further down the wool processing pipeline is that processors are screaming out for more production of wool from non-mule sheep. As our marketing body, does AWI have a plan to better facilitate that information flow from the trade to growers?
No doubt. I mean, as a non-mules grower myself, for 15 years I've been doing it. I think it's important to understand, you know, what the markets are saying. And sitting at AWI on the board, and certainly now sitting as the chairman, we make sure that we get reports coming back, market intelligence coming back from our consultants overseas and managers overseas. So we're looking at, you know, England and Europe and China, for instance, some of the major markets going in there, and really what's required. There's no doubt that there's a market for non-mules wool, and probably a continuing building market for non-mules wool. And the Australian industry have been supplying into that. Many people have been supplying into that for quite a few years without any issues. There's also, you know, a considerable number of sheep that are still mulesed in Australia, and, you know, in some of the pastoral areas feel very strongly that they want and need to continue to do that. And there's also a big demand coming out of China, for instance. So quite clearly China we can still sell those wools into China, and those people who want to produce those wools have still got a market, and it's hitting the auction room, and it's still getting bought, and it's going over into China. And, you know, we're getting plenty of messages from the overseas markets at the moment, and a lot of the messages are coming back around, you know, sustainability, traceability, environmental impacts, and they're the big areas out of all of the markets that we're really getting feedback on. And when it comes to dealing with the mulesing issue, it's certainly very relevant to the areas that want it, and that is being provided. But into the Chinese market, and where a lot of it's getting consumed domestically, about 50% of the wool going over there is getting consumed domestically. It's not an issue at this stage that's been raised. In the companies in China that are actually processing for European mills, some of those obviously have got a requirement through RWS and others, and they're sending wool back over there to meet their standards. But into the Chinese domestic market, we're not seeing the same signals at this stage. So happy to get the information back, but that's the information that's getting provided to us on a reasonably regular basis.
So in short, you're saying there's a question along these lines also from Mick Day, from Trangie, is that, you know, the signals from the market are not uniform. There are some consumers, some companies that this is an issue, but there are other markets, China in particular, that doesn't have a problem with mules wool.
They're certainly in the market and they're buying mules wool. You know, it's quite clear on the wool declaration what wool is mulesed and what wool is ceased mulesing and what wool is using AA and different things. So all of that declaration is quite clear. They're quite clear, and it's quite upfront, and people are buying it knowing exactly what they're buying. And most certainly when that wool's going into the market, it's getting bought, and it's getting, you know, China are buying about 85% of the wool. So they're very strong in the marketplace. They're well aware of it, and I presume they're buying that because they know they can then sell it domestically into their market. So that's the signals. I mean, that's the reality of the signals. Other areas that want non-mules wool for specific brands or whatever, yes, that message is also very clear, and yes, that message is also, that wool is also getting supplied back into those markets. And if those companies obviously want more of that wool, then obviously, you know, they can send very clear market signals to be able to extract more of that wool. We do know out of sort of surveys that are being run that people are seriously looking at moving to more non-mules. You know, they're looking at all of their options on farm to have a look and see what they can do on farm, and whether they can move to non-mules and what that'll actually mean to them in their business. So we know a lot of people in the industry in Australia at the moment are considering their options, and over the next 4 to 5 years, they'll make some decisions about where they want to go.
So to the specific question from Mick about will AWI promote the wool from sheep that do not need mulesing, I think what you're saying is that AWI promotes all Australian wool.
We'll promote all wool, and so we're not in a position AWI to turn around and favour one or the other. We've got to sell the wool off the crossbred lands. We've got to sell you know, wool off all of the broad wool sheep borders. Then we've got to come back in, and we've got the broader end of the merinos and the Derny wool, and then we've got the you know, we get into the fine, the super fines and the ultra fines, and then we've got sheep, some sheep that are mules. We've got some sheep that use anaesthetics and analgesias. We've got a whole range of issues there. So we can't identify individual components in that. So what we've got to do is create as much demand as we can across the board for all wools, and that's going from cars to shoes to carpets to homewares, right down to the next to the skin stuff down at the superfine end. And if we can continue to drive demand for all wool, then it'll be a benefit to the whole industry. And that's without, you know, trying to target any one area, because the more we target one area, the more we're leaving another area out. And it's very, very important that we get rid of all the product from Australian wool growers.
And also from Mick Day at Trangie, making the point about all the money that's spent on research trying to eliminate fly strike. His argument is that the solution already is there from the late Dr. Jim Watts. You know, it's a system of classing, produces a flock that is 99% or better blow-fly resistant. You know, I think you're saying AWI's position is, you know, it's up to growers to decide their flock and then what animal husbandry techniques that they use.
Look, it is, and once again, it's we're not going to be in a position to tell anyone what they can or sheep they can or sheep they can't use. We're not going to tell them what classing method they should or shouldn't use, because there's no doubt there's different views on how to class sheep, and we on AWI don't want to get involved in that. The ones of us that are on the board that do produce wool have all got our own different ways of doing it, and so that diversity that sits on the board is what naturally comes out of the industry alone. And so for our own environment, we've got to make decisions. What our weather conditions are like, what our environmental conditions are like, what our managers like, the ability to be able to get labour or not get labour. There's a whole range of things that we've got to put around to make a decision. So, yes, a lot of people will argue that Jim Watt's had a very important part to play in that. And then there are other people who want to go down a different breeding philosophy, and so AWI aren't in a position to drive one way or another. I think the evidence in, the MLP project, the genetic, all of the data that's being picked up in the MLP project, and a lot of the data that's being used now through ASBVs, through breech wrinkle monitoring, breech cover monitoring, all of that stuff, I think in the end, and obviously getting right down into genomics, all of that stuff in the end is going to provide a lot of very, very strong and powerful tools for individual growers to be able to use. And, they can all sit down individually and analyse that information and have a look and see how it best fits into their business. And that's what we want to do, is make sure that we can provide all that information, allow people, if they want to go out of a heavy skin type sheep and they want to go into a non-mules thing, how to transition out of that from one to another if they want to, how they can utilise all of the technology that's out there. And so that's our role as we see it, is to provide all that information, provide the tools, allow growers to make up their own mind. And if we provide the market information and provide the tools, then I'm not sure that there's much else in that space that we can actually do to allow them to have a good think about where they want to go and what they want to breed.
Last question, in regard to having a wool class certificate system that actually, prefers or rates more highly sheep that are highly resistant to blowfly. Is that something that we should look at, or does it go back to the point that you were just making, that really it's up to individual growers to work out what they're doing, their circumstances? AWI isn't going to tell growers what to do.
Yeah, it's not that right. I mean, what we want to do is make sure, once again, that we're providing them with all the tools. So we do some sheep classing at the moment. Stuart Hodgson does a lot of sheep classing schools at the moment, which is looking about some of the basic structures of sheep, and I've been to a couple of those that are very interesting. I've been to Jim Watt's days, and this year when it first started, and I found them all very interesting. All of those days very interesting, and there's a lot of stuff you can pull out of all of those days that can actually help inform you and help you make up your own mind. So from a sheep classing point of view, I think there's options there. I mean, once people make a decision about where they want to go, they can obviously sit down and get the expertise that they want to actually help support them through that process. So I don't have any problems about people being provided, all the tools that they need. This is an individual choice. It's an individual choice. What we've got to do is provide them with the information to allow them to make that decision, and I'm quite comfortable in doing that.
Well, thanks very much, Jock. That was very good. Thanks for being involved with the Parkdale Open Day. Very much appreciated. We'll take a 5-minute break, so if you want to grab a coffee or prepare any questions and send them through, just press on the top right-hand corner, the little speech bubble there, and you can enter your questions there and they'll be addressed throughout the session. And we'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Tim Marweedle, Managing Director of Snyder Australia, and then we'll follow on with Peter Howe. Thank you.
Hi Don, thanks very much for inviting me to speak at the Parkdale Open Day Ramsale. Look, demand for non-mulesed wool is growing regularly and it's no longer a requirement demanded by the European customers only. Some Chinese clients are now also seeking non-mulesed certified wool. We can only provide the grower with this information, and while we continue to support non-mulesed clips, other buyers will too. Premiums are really difficult to quantify because buyers are attracted to lines of wool for a variety of reasons and not just the mulesing status. The market price is determined by a variety of factors and quality is a major part of that. I see the non-mules, cease mules status as a kind of insurance policy because you have demand on your wool that goes much further down the supply chain, and you're not just reliant on the spot market to determine the sale price on your wool every single day. The last 12 months have been really difficult for everyone for obvious reasons. The wool industry has been extremely fortunate to have the general demand from China during this period. This helped to support the market, but did little to show the real demand for non-mulesed wool while the European customers were facing very challenging retail circumstances. Now that we are seeing the European markets opened up and improve, we are seeing more support for non-mulesed wool at auction. There's no doubt an amount of non-mulesed wool that is not finding its way to auction. Supply chain partnerships that many growers want and is now a big part of retail marketing strategy generally have strong sustainability requirements that stipulate an animal welfare strategy that includes a non-mulesed requirement. The market for privately contracted wool is not communicated as this is a private agreement. If they were publicly available, this could help to explain any market benefits in being a non-mulesed wool producer. More and more of our clients are looking to learn more about who they are sourcing their wool from. Non-mulesed is a requirement in 100% of those inquiries that we get from customers who want to engage with the grower. We are confident that this message is getting through. While the uptake to non-mules is a little slow, we are seeing more and more non-mules, cease mules wool clip onto the market. I think as an industry, we just have to be transparent. Wool has a fantastic story to tell. The National Wool Declaration is the starting point and must be completed by all growers. Then the customer can make the choice, and the grower will benefit if they have made the decisions that provide that customer with what they want. Traceability is the new sustainability. Australia has been considered an origin for mulesed wool for too long, but this is and will continue to change for the benefit of those who have been able to make the transition to non-mulesed. Good luck today. Thank you.
Hello Don, Pam, Robert, Scott, Sarah and all of Parkdale. This is Peter Howe calling. Thanks for allowing me to be part of your field day today. I've had 5 questions posed that I'll hopefully be able to provide some answers to. And the first of these is from Mick Day at Trangie. And his question was, when physically looking at sheep in a classing race, how do I determine if a sheep has too much grease and how much grease is too much? This really is a Jim Watts question rather than a question for me. How many times over the past 2 years have we thought, just ask Jim? I'm sure a lot of us are doing that. So Jim's not here, so I'll have to channel him if I can, and in failing that I'll rely on what I've watched him do over some 46 years of working with him. Jim said that the wool fibre needs to have just a fine coating of lanolin, or grease, over its surface to confer on it its resistance to the elements. The grease comes from the sebaceous glands in the skin, which is exuded not only into the wool follicle but also onto the surface of the skin in the sheep. In the SRS breeding system, as the primary fibre is reduced in diameter, the associated glands also tend to be smaller, but never too small to result in dry, harsh, greaseless wools. Jim used his scoring system for whiteness and brightness to assess wool, grease and swint. Score 1 was for white, bright wools, through to score 4 for the yellow, heavy, greasy and swint-full wools. The latter scores correlate with primary fibre diameters and sebaceous gland diameters. We used to see sheep with blocky staples and tangled fibres with huge primary fibre diameters, anything from 80 to 140 microns, with blobs of black grease on the tips of the staples. Clearly these sheep were lanolin factories rather than wool factories, and you don't get paid much for the lanolin. Our score 1 for whiteness and brightness is the ideal, and Jim would say, I'm sure, get more of these into the flocks. The second question is, as a commercial grower selling wether lambs, how best should I utilise my limited buying power? Am I better to buy one ram with all of the correct qualities at a higher price and give him the maximum number of ewes he can handle? Or do I purchase 3 rams that are of the same genetics with not as good figures to do the job quicker and be sure to cover all ewes? Well, this really is another Jim question, but I'll have a crack. Presumably what you're wanting to do is to improve your ewe base so as to have numbers of dams or mothers that are capable of producing the wether lambs with your desired production traits. The female genome, although not completely refractory to epigenetic influences, is much more stable regardless of the time of joining. hopefully we might touch on this issue later in the later questions coming. Investing in breeding investing in the breeding of that really sound, productive flock of mothers is of paramount importance. And this goes for many species, whether you're breeding racehorses or beef cattle or whatever. Presumably, we chase that high-priced ram, high-priced because many buyers are wanting him. That ram with all the correct qualities, because we are wanting to fix or enhance a particular trait in our breeding ewe flock. Jim used to say that we need some freaks to get a quantum leap in genetic gains. That is chasing impact rams, and these are often the expensive ones. But you have to use these rams when they are free of epigenetic influences and can breed on, that is, express their superior traits in their progeny. But more on this in the latter questions to come. It is if we don't use these expensive rams so that they can express their unique genes in their progeny, you might be just as well off buying cheaper rams, but more of them. The latter may even produce progeny superior to those of the high-priced ram if used when their reduced epigenetic influences are operating. Epigenetics is modification or modifications made to the DNA that regulate gene expression without changing the DNA sequences. This is the simple definition of epigenetics. So when are the epigenetic influences operating or having least effect on gene expression? That is, deleterious effects on gene expression. When is this time? The breeding season is when the epigenetic effects are at their least deleterious, and this time is from the autumn equinox, around about Anzac Day or thereabouts, through to the winter solstice, June 21st. So whether you buy that highly expensive ram to try to prescriptively breed for a particular an enhancement of a particular trait, or whether you stick to cheaper rams with essentially the same genetic makeup, but at lower cost. I've really not given you the answer to which one to buy, but perhaps the next two questions might give us some food for thought so that you're able to formulate your own answers. So the third question comes from Robert Mudford, I believe. If I'm joining out of season, should I be using a higher percentage of rams, and why? At the peak of the breeding season, that is the autumn equinox through to the winter solstice, 100% of ewes will be at some stage of their active breeding cycles. We need plenty of rams to cover all of the ewes in estrus. Some ewes will be joined several times by the one ram, others may miss being joined. High joining percentages in this case is going to ensure that all ewes, or most of them, will be covered. However, when we're joining out of season, any time outside of that magic autumn equinox to winter solstice period, not all the ewes will be cycling all of the time. The rams similarly will have reduced libido. The rams may or may not want to serve a ewe in estrus. Added to this, the epigenetic forces are at their peak, making it less likely that all of the desirable production genes are expressed. In other words, the rams do not breed on. And not only that, 30 to 50% of the pregnancies that will be produced from the joining will be lost from miscarriage, especially twin pregnancies. And if you doubt this, have a look at your scanning results and compare that to lambs born. The latter phenomenon is in fact loses the Australian economy $1.2 billion annually in lamb losses, and that figure 1.2 billion is based on 2017 lamb prices. We might try to use melatonin to induce all of the ewes to cycle out of season, and this works well, but it cannot be used in rams, so at least the formulations we have now aren't registered for rams. So if we have all of the ewes cycling and in estrus, but many rams with low libido, then yes, we must have many more rams to ensure the ewes are covered. But, and it's a big but, the epigenetic forces on the rams make it a lot less likely that their full genetic potential will be expressed. Embryonic and fetal deaths will be plentiful, and in general the quality of the offspring is comparatively poorer. And we have plenty of experimental and field evidence to prove this. So we need plenty of good quality rams, both in season and out of season joinings, but for different reasons. I hope I'm not confusing you with all this, but if you think about it, hopefully it'll become a bit clearer. Scott Mudford then asks, what is the effect of protein Z in the semen, and how long does it take for protein Z to get out of the system and to be reproduced? Well, there are many proteins in semen, some shared between species and some specific to individual species. These proteins are present in varying proportions depending on the time of the season. That is it the breeding season or is it in the non-breeding season? I was awarded my PhD degree for isolating, purifying and demonstrating the in vivo and in vitro activity of a protein that is common to the ram, the buck, the bull, stallion and to man, and possibly many other species. I just so happened to call this protein the Z protein because I had labelled it the Z on my electrophoresis protein separation gels, and that for no other reason. The protein Z induces cellular death or apoptosis, as it's scientifically known as, of the sperm cells. And this is a natural and essential process in reproduction because the sperm cells in the female reproductive tract are foreign materials and need to be degraded. The action of this protein is the epigenetic influence that I've been referring to previously, or at least one of the epigenetic influences. The Z protein is produced at a constant rate throughout the year. It seems to be able to be produced with relatively low levels of dihydrotestosterone in the blood. That's the hormone that really drives male development of male characteristics, etc. It's present all of the time in semen. Its level tends not to change all that much. Outside of the breeding season, when this protein is present in relative excess, the telltale signs of the epigenetic effects can be detected in the sperm cells themselves. These sperm, when they fertilise the ovum or the egg, result in embryos and fetuses that are more likely to die in utero or miscarry, and if they do survive, end up as poorer quality lambs. In the breeding season, however, there are inhibiting proteins produced by the seminal vesicle glands, which dampen down the effect of the Z protein. DNA disruption in the sperm is minimised, and the important production genes, in fact, all of the genes, are able to be expressed to a maximum. Embryonic and fetal loss is reduced to less than 5%, and the major production traits are expressed to a maximum. Traits like fibre density and length, birth coats that are enhanced for better lamb survival, yearling weaning weights, back fat, skin thickness, lack of pigmentation in ears, face, etc. And the list goes on and on. Jim and I worked with field application of the seminal plasma proteins, or the Z protein, for many years, and we have an abundance of evidence to demonstrate the epigenetic effects that I've alluded to. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but I'll be more than happy to answer any emails, and I think Don could supply my email address to anyone who wants to carry this discussion further. The fifth and final question is, what if the only time that joining can occur is in October? Well, in October, many ewes will be in anestrus, that is, they're not cycling at all, or cycling erratically. Most rams will have reduced libido. That's just a given. The hormonal reasons for this are very well known. At this stage or time of the year, the epigenetic influence, as I previously described, are at their maximum. We can use melatonin implants to induce the ewes to cycle out of season and produce many more synchronous ovulations. And this is very important, particularly for twin lamb survival. But for the rams, however, there is not a lot that can be done now. Melatonin is effective, but the current formulations cannot be used unless they are used off-label. There are new formulations being developed, and these have every chance of being effective for use in the ram. Remedies for this will come, I'm sure, but for now, the ram used to be used in October will just not express his true genetic value. And a lot of this will be disputed, but I put it to you that you should go out and just see, have a look what's going on in the paddock. Compare your October conceived lambs with those conceived in April, May, June, for example, and just compare the quality. If anyone has ongoing questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me through an email, and I'll be happy to try to have a discussion with you. Thanks again for including me in your field day today, and I hope you all keep well and away from that wretched COVID-19 virus. Bye for now.
Well, thanks, Tim and Peter. It was very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Parkdale SRS Ram Sale 2020. I'm Jason Harton of Harton Shoot Bell of Narrabeen at Parkdale. This year, 2021, under difficult circumstances of COVID, the Ram Sale will register, which will entail an invitation and a registration card for you to travel to participate. Only essential buyers to attend the auction. Signing in with Parkdale's QR code, sanitizer and safe distances will be adhered to. 2021 season, wow. Excellent pastures, excellent crops, extreme stock prices, low interest rates. It just doesn't get much better. The Parkdale sale will be an excellent opportunity for clients to buy sires for the 2021 and 2022 joining seasons. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you on the sale day. Thank you.
For those who don't know me, I'm Robert Mudford, part of the Parkdale team here. I'm going to today go through the SRS Genetics group. Has formed a group after it's taken a little bit of time, but we've finally got there with an SRS group now called SRS Genetics, and taking on commercial memberships. So that's pretty exciting for the guys in the SRS system and newcomers. And then I'll talk a bit more about the rams, some info on the rams, shearing dates and etc. And then we're going to go through some of the rams and just look at some of the lots individually and put my point of view across on them. Yeah, so the SRS Genetics group has been formed. We have a board which is made up of stud members at this stage, and yeah, to make decisions on behalf of the group and help you know, keep things moving in R&D and young sire programs and marketing and those sorts of things. So it's pretty exciting for the SRS growers that we've formed this group, and we're starting to get a bit of traction with it and moving forward. There's SRS membership for commercial members, which is a form that's filled out and sent back to the stud producer that has that they purchased their rams from, and they can, you know, tick that off and make sure that everything's right with non-mulesing and you know, the other certifications within that certificate, and then you can become an SRS member. With the membership, there's 2 levels. So producers with under 1,000 breeding ewes is $400 for membership, and over 1,000 ewes is $600. And with that membership, you can recoup your membership or get your membership back on rams that you purchase. So $100 per ram that you purchase will be refunded or taken off the ram purchase price. So that's something that is, you know, it's really SRS commercial members. It won't cost them anything to be a member. The benefits of being a member is marketing and branding of our product, whether it's wool, lamb, surplus sheep, which would be the main 3 products we would produce. Have a certification that goes with them, so it gives buyers an assurance that you know, they're producing a product that's certified by a body of producers that you know, wants to keep our quality as high as possible, and all sorts of marketing opportunities are opening up all the time. So I think it's very valuable to commercial producers to become a member. And those membership forms need to be back into the stud breeder or SRS Genetics themselves, and you'll get an ID from that, which then you can take to the ram sale and use as your code for getting your refund of $100 per ram up to the value of your membership. Yeah, so that's a bit about what's happening at SRS Genetics, and there'll be more to come in the future. There's, you know, in the future there'll be R&D projects and you know, field days and those sorts of things. It's very difficult with the way things are at the moment, but you know, hands-on field days and workshops and classing days, online webinars, yeah, there'll be all sorts of things that SRS commercial members can access. So yeah, that's all on the SRS Genetics side. So now I'll just talk a little bit about the rams, and then we're going to go through some of the rams in individual lots and just have a look through those. But the rams are shorn on the 15th of May. So they'll have just shy of 4.5 months at sale day. With the tops of them, you know, the longest stapled rams on sale day will be around that 80 millimetres plus. which is, it's a huge staple length on 4.5, not quite 4.5 months fleece growth. So yeah, that's pretty exciting, and they're going to average around that 60 odd mils, 60 mils plus for the entire drop, which is for 4.5 months. Yeah, which is pretty exciting as well. We know that we're heading the right direction with those sort of staple lengths. Yeah, so the rams are shorn 15th of May. Their September-October drop. The oldest ram in the catalogue is 1st of September and the youngest being the 10th of October. So they are only babies. They'll still, 99% of them will still have lamb teeth on ram sale day. We've got 100 rams for single auction and then another 270 grade rams to go through, which there's great depth right throughout the rams for fat, muscle, fleece weight, staple length. They're really starting to line up like peas in a pod. They're one after the other coming down the race. They're nice, soft, bright wools with fat and muscle and carcass figures. So really starting to hit goals in that way. The sale team has averaged 16.8 micron, 15.5 for CV, 1 for fat, 1.5 for muscle, and 7 for growth. So they're all heading into that around that top 20% plus for those breeding values. So that and matching the type of wools that we're getting on them is it's very exciting to see that we how the sheep are improving year on year. And yeah, there are grade rams available that will be available after the sale and after sale day. If anyone would like to go through the rams and do a pre-sale inspection, then Tuesday the 14th and Thursday the 16th of September, which is this week, and we would encourage people to contact us and make a time on those days, and we'll just do individual appointments to go through the sale rams. Yeah, so if anyone needs any more info, contact us, whether it's through Facebook or emails, or our details are on the website. So here we have lot 1 out of the Parkdale sale team. This guy's been selected up the front. He's 9.1 for growth, 1.2 for fat, and 2.1 for muscle, and a top wool ram as well. Very long, very soft, bold crimping, gutsy sort of wool on him. Yeah, so I think he's a top choice for me out of the sale, with those fat and muscle figures and a beautiful soft supple skin on him. Yeah, I think he's a top sheep. His size 1489, who's bred really well here and in a few other spots. He's Tasmania and up into Queensland. So yeah, they're big, robust sort of animals with fat and muscle and good skins. So he's a top choice for me. That's lot 1. So this guy's lot 5, 7 for growth, 1.1 for fat and 1.4 for muscle. Another top wool ram, very long stapled, very soft, very white. He's twin born. Yeah, he's another top pick for me. Very even all over his body. Very soft, very long. This guy's lot 6. One of the top wools in the sale. Super long, super soft, super white. Very bold crimping. Heavy cutting type. I'd say he's one of the longest stapled rams in this year's lineup. Yeah, so he's the number one for staple length in the sale. Lot 6. This is lot 9. This guy's got the full package as well. Good fat, muscle and growth. Very lustrous, very soft, very bold. He's got an excellent skin type on him. Very long stapled, heavy cutting, with all those carcass traits as well. So he's another top pick out of the sale rams. Lot 9. Lot 17. Very long, very soft, very white. He's got the carcass traits again as well. He's a top wool sire, and by 1489 again, which has been a leading sire here. Yeah, top sheep, good frame, very long stable. Lot 27, very bold, long, soft and white. He's another top wool ram with high carcass figures as well. Good fat, good muscle, good growth rates. Very productive sort of skin. Yeah, he's another number 1 pick. Yeah, lot 27. Lot 44, another top wool sheep. Very bold, very white, gutsy, heavy cutting type. With good fat and muscle again, over 1 for fat and over 1 for muscle. Yeah, he's another nice ram at the top of in the top picks. Very soft, very bold. Lot 49, silky soft, 13.4 micron this guy, so he's one of the finest rams in the catalogue. 0.7 for fat and 1.3 for muscle. So still great carcass figures on a 13 micron animal. Very soft, very white, waterproof type wool. With that micron and those carcass figures, he'd match any super ultra fine flock. Top sheep. Lot 66. Very long, very soft. Another high carcass figured ram. Free growing. It's got the right type of skin. Nice and soft, nice and white. If anyone would like any more details on the rams, we'll hold a private inspection day on Tuesday the 21st and Thursday the 23rd of September. You know, it'll be by appointment, so if people can contact us and we'll book a time and on either of those days and go through the rams that way. That'd be something that, you know, most people would like probably to do before the ram sale. So yeah, those 2 days are the days we have in place. If those days don't suit you, still contact us and we'll work something out if we can.
Leading up to the Parkdale Open Day, we've had a draw or a giveaway that's been promoted through social media, and we'll now draw the winner. Very good. Righto. And the winner is Amy. Well, that concludes today's open day here at Parkdale. Thanks everybody for participating, and big thanks to Jock, Laurie, Tim Marweedle and Peter Howe and Robert for taking us through the rams and explaining the SRS system. Also a massive thank you to Sarah, who kept us on track leading up to the event and kept us organised. Well done, Sarah. If anybody has any inquiries leading up to the sale, as Robert explained, we will have 2 days where by appointment you'll be able to come and view the rams, as I know a lot of people like to physically see the rams before actual sale day, and Auctions Plus will be also operating, so there will be an opportunity to come and inspect the rams. Just need to give us a call. Our contact details are out there, so just give us a ring. And that concludes today. Thank you very much.